Hello students, welcome to my Abhyas. We are here with the first chapter of biology of 11th standard and already we have discussed the first part of this chapter. I hope you have gone through all those videos and you have understood the concept very clearly. So now we are going to start with the next part of this chapter. This chapter I have divided into proper 3 or 4 parts so that it becomes easy for you to understand the concept clearly. See, this is the first chapter of your syllabus, right? So sometime it may happen to the feeling may come to you that okay, this chapter must be very difficult, or what exactly is present in this chapter. Don't worry about all these things. This chapter is actually very easy and we have got only 3 marks question which will be asked from this chapter, as I told you earlier also. Okay. So this chapter carries only 3 marks over here. As I told you, I have shown this before also, that the living world contains 3 marks. So in your board exam, you are going to get only 1 question of 3 marks. But from this question, in a twisted pattern, you may get some questions which is in NEET and CET, that is your competitive exams. And at that time, you have to only make sure one thing, that you should understand the question properly. I tell almost in all my videos that understanding a question, that what the question is asking and what the answer is supposed to be, to decide that only, that becomes difficult. And on that note, so many students fails to write the correct answer, though you know it. Like, it is not that you don't know about it, but rather you fail to answer that because you are actually you get got confused while answering it. So don't do that, okay? We're talking about the diversity in the living world. What is biodiversity? Biodiversity is the species richness. That means we have different varieties of organisms present on the earth's surface. We have the plants, animals, microorganisms, funguses, and so on. So all these organisms together makes our world so beautiful, and we call it as biodiversity. That is biological diversity. Okay, we discussed in the previous videos that what exactly is binomial nomenclature tells us. Binomial nomenclature is a scientific way of naming one particular organism. We are going to name one organism as per the required instructions given by 2 organizations, ICBN and ICZN. I told you to remember this full form of ICBN and ICZN. I hope you remember that. What is ICBN and ICZN? It is International Code for Botanical Nomenclature and International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. These 2, ICBN and ICZN, are the 2 organizations which decides the new organism's name. And all the organisms which was there, which was already discovered before, will be named already been named by these 2 organizations. Okay. Now, we're talking about classification, and I told you in the previous session what is classification. Classification is a systemic way of classifying a particular organism into a proper group. And on that note, we have some more terms and terminologies which is going to come up, and this is very, very important that you should remember the hierarchy of classification. Okay, so this is called as taxonomy. What is it? It is called as taxonomy. It is a branch of biology which deals with the study of a naming of organisms, their characteristics and their groups. Okay. So what is taxonomy? The branch that deals with the identification, nomenclature and classification of organisms are called as taxonomy. What is taxonomy? What we are doing in taxonomy? This is a branch which is basically deals with the identification. We are identifying the organism. Nomenclature, we are naming the organism, and classification of the organism. In this, we are actually identifying, classifying and naming. All these 3 things is done together in this one branch of biology which is called as taxonomy. So taxonomy is the branch of biology which deals with the study of nomenclature, classification and identification of an organism. I hope this is clear to you. It is a branch of biology which is dealing with all these things and which is helping our work easier. Now, there is something called as systematics. What is the meaning of systematics? System. Here is something called as system, right, in systematics. What do we mean by system? There, see, for each and everything, there is a proper system, right? Like, for example, you wanted to write a particular sentence, or when we wanted to go to school and attend the assembly, there is a proper system of doing it, right? Is it like you belong to 11th standard, you go and stand with the 9th standard students or 5th standard student? You don't do so, right? Because you know there is a particular system which is already known to you, and you go and stand according to your height, according to your line, according to your standard, or maybe according to your group. Maybe in your school you have different groups or clubs, and you have different color of if you have different dresses like red, blue, green, yellow, and on that particular day all the students of that club will be standing in one particular line during the assembly. I hope all these things will be happening in your school also, school or college, wherever you are studying right now. So the systematics is something which talks about a system, which provides us a proper guidance that how I am going to classify the organism. It is not possible like if I get, for example, if I get it is not possible like if I get an organism today and I just start naming it immediately. Can I do so? How can I name that organism? Because there must be some system I should follow. What are those systems? Those comes under this systematics, which will give us some rules, which will set some of the criterias that need to be followed so that we get the proper naming of an organism. Okay, so systematics provides a classification of organisms. They will classify the organism, identification, they will identify the organism, and naming, that is they will give the name to the organism based on the evolutionary relationship. Now, what is this evolutionary relationship? We talk about how this organism is evolved. What exactly are their characteristics? How can we separate them from other organisms? All these ideas will come from the evolutionary relationship. That means, if I, for example, if I get a new variety of algal group, algae, they are the lower category of plants. Are they photosynthetic or not? Do they have roots or not? Do they produce flowers or not? Does they have seeds or not? All these will be bringing them to one particular class, and this will be also understood by the evolutionary characteristics of the organism. So systematics will be providing us identification, classification of an organism, identifying the organism, and naming of the organism based on the relationship. Okay. So now the system of classification, which tells us what is about in this particular chart, what is exactly showing species, genus, family, order, class. If you get confused, wait for some time. I'll be explaining each one of it clearly to you. Now, the word systematics, what I used over here, the systematics. This word systematics is derived from a Latin word called as Systema. What is the Latin word? The Latin word is called as Systema. This word was used by Linnaeus, Carolus Linnaeus, for the first time in his book called as Systema Naturae. This is the name of the Carolus Linnaeus book, Systema Naturae. Okay, so which book Carolus Linnaeus published on the basis of classification? The book name is Systema Naturae, and at that time he used the word systema. From this systema only this systematic word has been derived. On this particular journal, on this particular publication, Carolus Linnaeus gave us some ideas about how to classify an organism. He also has set some of the rules for the classification of the organism. Okay, so let us learn one by one what exactly this systematics is all about, what exactly is there in the taxonomy, and what is this particular table showing to us. Okay, as I'm telling again and again, don't get confused thinking that okay, this is very tough and I'm not will be able to. It is very easy topic, and this topic will be very much required when you read for the further chapters. Now I'll be talking first. I'll tell you before going to tell you about like what is kingdom, what is class, what is order, and all those stuffs. Let me tell you first why we need to go for classification. I told you why we need binomial nomenclature. Similar way, do we really require to classify an organism? Is it required? What do you think? Do you need to classify an organism? Do you need to know that so many steps how our organism is classified? Is it required? Yes, it is required. Why? Because the grouping of organism is done scientifically. the scientific fraternity or the associations are going to name them scientifically and systematically. So it is not a haphazard one. It is not done in by any random procedure. It is done by a systematically and scientifically by a group of particular scientific people who are like the scientists, and they have helped us to understand for studying various forms of life. By this classification, we can actually understand the various forms of life, how the life has been evolved, and what could be the characteristics of that particular organism. Maybe we can find out some patterns. That organism may be required for some scientific research work. We don't know that, right? So all these things, once we put the particular organism in a particular group or a system, then only we can identify this. So the classification is basically nothing but grouping of organisms scientifically and systematically gives us a better platform for studying the various forms of life. So just to understand the various forms of life, this particular concept is very much required. It is not possible to study every organism. Do you think that you can you remember or can you study all the organisms present on the earth? Okay, not all the organisms. Let us take one particular group. Can you study about all the insects? Okay, you don't want to study about insects, no problem. Can you study about all the flowers of the planet? Not possible, right? It is really impossible for any single person to study about all the organisms present on the earth. Then what we can do? We can actually study the similar characteristics of some organism, and that similar characteristics will bring us give us a proper idea about one new organism also. And that is only possible if we classify the organism. If we don't classify the organism, then how will you come to know about it, isn't it? So it is not possible to study every organism. That is why classification is very important. If we can arrange the organisms into groups and study one of them, it gives sufficient information about the particular group. Now what we are going to do is we are going to put them into group. Okay, we'll take some living organisms and I'll be putting them into group, and you will only say me that, ma'am, this process is very easy. For example, if I say carnivorous organism, some examples are coming in your mind or not? Can you recall some of the 5 examples of carnivores? Yes. If I say example of omnivorous organisms or animals, can you name them? Yes, right? How can you name them? Because you know what are the characteristics of omnivorous organism. If I say photosynthetic organism, or if I say an organism which contains green pigment, what comes in your mind? The plants or the trees. And then if I say name some shrubs or herbs, what exactly I'm telling? I'm not giving you each and every organism's name, each and every plant's name. Rather, I'm giving you some common term over here. But immediately something is coming in your mind, or you can at least cite some of the examples. How can you do that? Because you know that this particular group includes these organisms. Like, for example, what shall I say? Let us take mammals. If I say mammals, what comes in your mind? Those organisms having a mammary gland is called as mammals, right? Now in that case, if I say name some mammals, I first think of cat, dog, cow, humans, giraffe, chimpanzee, elephant. I can name so many. I think you also can do so. How you can name these mammals? Because you know all these organisms has some similar characteristics, and that is why they are placed under this group. If I say, for example, birds, okay, birds are also called as aves. In the scientific term, we call as aves.